And now it's time for something a little different. Not completely different, just a little different. In this video, rather than me setting everything up, posing the figures, and showing you how I do all that, my thought process, I've already set everything up and I've already even shot the picture. So this time what's going to happen is I'm going to talk just a little bit about why I made the decisions I did, and then I'm going to throw this thing in Photoshop and you'll see me edit the pic just a little bit. I'm not going to go too crazy, but I also don't have any preconceived notions on what I want to do with it, so it might be a little bit of fun. As always, links will be in the video description to everything I show you here, which is really just Wolverine and the lights. You know what that means. Consume. And now, with that utter shamelessness out of the way, here's the setup and why I set it up the way I did. First off, I went with this MAFEX X-Force Wolverine. I just like him. I think he's cool. He's Wolverine. That basically makes him the man. And because that X-Force Wolverine is all decked out in gray and black with a little bit of red, I decided to backlight everything with these red gels over my LEDs. I'm telling you folks, these are the workhorses of the Toypixx studio. But I also wanted some true color from the figure to show through, and that's why I used this white light from this LED. Of course, we have this killer diorama from High School Creations. I'll leave a link to his site too. He does killer work. You gotta check him out. I hid the iPad right inside the door of the diorama so that Wolverine would have the bright red light hitting him from right there. And yes, that is the best nightlight app that I'm using. And you can see I have this piece here just in front of the camera. The reason that's there is so it can provide just a little bit of foreground blur in the shot. I do loves me my foregrounds. And the last thing to really talk about here is that Wolverine's being propped up by this copper wire to give him that killer action pose. I like using copper because it's super malleable, so I can usually get it to do whatever I need it to do to give whichever figure, whichever pose I really want it to be in, I suppose is what I was looking for there. Now, the way that this is going to work is I already shot Wolverine with the wire, and I also removed Wolverine and the wire to take a second shot. And the reason I did that is because in editing, what I'll be able to do is mask out from one picture and reveal what's underneath that, which will be just all this empty space, which is something that is cool. It'll make it look like the wire was never there in the first place. And if that explanation sucked, don't worry. You'll understand it as I'm working on it. Speaking of, let's take this to the computer. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. These are the two photos that I just shot. Now, I like to leave a little extra room on the top and the bottom so that I can squeeze in a little bit here just because the proportions, the dimensions of the photos that we post online, they're not quite these dimensions, so that's why I leave a little bit at the top and the bottom oftentimes when it comes to these shots. That's the shot with Wolverine, and yes, I did use, and I forgot to mention this, I used the flashlight on my phone to hit this side because his head was not separating out very well from the background when I was doing the testing shots. So this is just the flashlight from my phone. Pretty good stuff, pretty awesome. Works in my favor anyway. And then this is that picture just with Wolverine removed and the cable, or I'm sorry, the copper, so that I'll be able to edit all that stuff out easily. Now there are a lot of things I could do right here. I'm not gonna mess too much with it. This is right after I opened the whole thing. So there's not really, I don't feel like I need to do much here as far as contrast, highlights, shadows. I do like to play. Let's see what this would do. Yeah, that's too much. I actually pretty much like that out of the camera when it comes to the light stuff. But the color, I always enjoy saturation and going a little crazy here. Let me see what we've got. If I really crank up the saturation, that's a lot of red. Nah, we don't even need to do that. That's no good. That was vibrance. What am I doing? There's your saturation. Yeah, that's just too much. A little subtle color adjustment isn't bad. But yeah, I think I'm liking how it came out of the camera, which is unusual. Oftentimes I like to do a whole lot of playing, and I'll still do some playing when we get into Photoshop itself. Let's see, color mixer, color grading, no. These are just kind of, this is before you actually open the images. This is what happens is you get this whole setup here that you can check out and see if you want to do anything before you actually end up opening up Photoshop. Now, color saturation, or I'm sorry, color mixer, what we've got here, just so you know, I can mess with the hue of the red. Not something I want to do, but I could. I can also select saturation here, so I could just crank up the red, which is kind of cool, but probably unnecessary. Maybe I'll play a little more slightly with that stuff when it comes to adjustment layers in Photoshop itself. And I could play with the luminosity, kind of how bright the different colors show up. So there's sort of those options when it comes to the color mixer. Yeah, I think I'm good here. Now you'll notice that these two are already, they're both selected. That's because if I had chosen to do anything here with Photoshop, it would have affected both of them. If I had just one of them selected, I would have changed something maybe on this Wolverine picture right now, but then on the picture without Wolverine, nothing would have changed. So what I'm going to do now is open these. Open. All right. There you go. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command A, which copies the whole picture. Then I'm going to hit Command C, and yes, I'm working on a Mac. I think Control is basically your command if you're using Windows. And then I'm just going to hit Paste. And all that did was it put the Wolverine image right on top of this image, the background image that didn't have him. And the reason I wanted to do that right away is I want to mask out that copper. That needs to be one of the first things that I really get cracking on. So we're set there. I want to select a brush that's going to help me mask it out. And there I hit Command plus so that I could zoom in. And you can see there that I hit mask. I'm just brushing now. It's getting rid of the copper. And the reason that's working is because in the lower left-hand corner, in case you can't see, the foreground color I have selected is black. Black is the color you want to use when you're masking out this stuff. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the left bars, kind of. I'm trying to think. Wow, I stink at what they're called. But let's see, they're right next to, the one I'm hitting right now is right next to the P on the keyboard. Brackets. Good Lord, there it is, brackets. So I hit the left bracket, that shrinks it. If I hit the right bracket, it makes it go bigger. I need to shrink it because I'm getting dangerously close to Wolverine and I don't want to mask him out of the image. So now I have to think of things to say as I'm sitting here working really hard on this thing. Here we go. All right, I'm really close to Wolvie, so this is where I want to be a little more careful. Okay, I think that worked. And this is when you guys see things that people have masked out, or you see a character jumping or whatever. See, I got too close there. But you see a character jumping through the sky and there's nothing holding them up and all that. People that are using Photoshop, this is generally how they're going to do it. Now, there could be something else going on, by the way, and I haven't played with it enough. Photoshop now has a feature called generative fill. Good Lord, I just keep messing up. It's got a feature called generative fill that's basically kind of AI, and you can tell it what you want in the space. All right, folks, this is getting annoying. Here we go. Okay, I'm just going to take it really slow, go this way. All right, I think I got it. But yeah, that generative fill, I might be able to do this a little easier with that. I just haven't messed with it enough to be able to tell you how well it works. So that's why I'm not going with that right now, is this is already going to be a little bit of time that everybody's going to get to see me playing in Photoshop. We didn't need to show off me trying to learn generative fill at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to use that right hand bracket since I'm away from Wolverine now. And now it should be easy. I'm just hitting Command minus so that I can zoom out on the picture. And I'm going to hit that right hand bracket again. And still just getting rid of the copper. So you can see why I had to take 2 shots there. Is because what this is doing is exposing the background layer, the first layer that didn't have any of that didn't have Wolverine in the copper. So check this out. I'm going to now hide the layer that is the background layer that didn't have Wolverine in the copper. And you can see the area that I masked out. So there's that. Now, I could mask out this light over here that's on the left that came from my phone's flashlight, but I think I'm going to keep it. I think it looks right considering all the light that's hitting the side of Wolverine here. So now, these are adjustment layers, and I feel better about using adjustment layers than I would have doing the stuff at the very front, because that stuff I can't change. Adjustment layers I can always mess with. I can always mess with. I got a little bit of Tyson in there. But here, what I decided to pick was selective color. And what I enjoy about that is right now I have, see, the red color chosen. And if I drop this down, I'll be able to choose yellows, greens, cyans, all that, right? So I have red chosen, and I can make it any, like just tint it a little bit with any of these colors, including going a little more red, but that wasn't crazy saturation like we got before. And if I move it all the way to the right, I get a little more, or I get a lot more cyan. This is the cyan channel. The opposite of cyan when you're playing with this stuff is red. So that's why when you go left, you get red. That's why when you go right, you get a little more cyan going on. I might look at that here in a minute. Magenta's opposite is green. So you're seeing what's going on there. Obviously, there's a lot of magenta in the image because it wants to totally flip out to green. And yeah, that's if I crank up the magenta all the way. And I do enjoy, I like looking at this right now. I like the graphic design look that that picture has. But I don't really like it enough to keep it there. So I'm going to just hit Command Z and that'll reset it to 0. Again, this is just playing a bit. Opposite of yellow is blue, so if I go to the left, I'm getting the yellow that's in that red to turn blue, so we're getting a little purple. And if I go right, I'm getting it. There's a little more orange going on, which doesn't look bad, actually. That's kind of cool. And then there's the blacks. So if you go left, opposite of black is white. Go right, opposite of black. Well, I'm sorry, black is just black. And that might be something to play with as well. Just because it's Wolverine, it's a freaky shot. Ooh. I kind of like that, but I don't want to go too crazy with it. And I might like to go a little more nuts with the red. Just a little, though. I like seeing what happens when you crank it all the way to the left and the right. But I don't necessarily want to use that far to the left or the right. And I do like the yellow here. It's a real subtle difference between just going with the red. Not a lot. I'm not going to use a lot of the yellow. But yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Now, one thing I can do as well, we can play with the whites, we can play with the neutrals, and we can play with the blacks. I'm going to leave the whites. I'm going to drop down the neutrals, though. I always like the idea of kind of opposite colors. So in the midtones, or the neutrals now, what I'm going to do, since there's so much red on there, maybe add a little cyan would be kind of cool in the neutrals. That's not working as well as I'd like. It might be that cyan ends up happening a little more. Let's see, let's actually try blue here. Blue's not bad, but that would have to be awfully subtle if I used the blue. And I kind of like the graphic nature of just the red, too. This is just, folks, this really is how I do things. I just sit here and I play until I get a look that I really like. There's something. We could take the neutrals and pop them up, make them a little darker or a little lighter. I kind of like that a little lighter, actually. That looks good. Yeah, there's really no rhyme nor reason, it would seem, huh? Let's see, with black, let's see if that gets a little, there we go. That's bringing in a little more of that cyan opposite that I like. You can see it especially on the left-hand side. That's looking better. If I go all the way, actually all the way on cyan looks pretty good. I could back it off. You know, I'm going to go all the way on cyan with the black channel. And we could lighten up the cyan just a little bit. Lighten up the black channel with the cyan. Give it so it's not such a dark, dark picture. That's kind of cool too. So now what I can do is I can hide everything I just did and see what I think. I gotta say, I like what we've put together here so far a lot more. I think that looks really cool. In fact, I'm not even sure there's much more that needs to be done. I'm gonna look here real quick at all our options. I'm happy with the brightness and contrast. What levels does, I'll just show you, I'm probably not gonna use it, is it makes the darks a lot darker. Look at that. And obviously it makes the lights a lot lighter, which, let's see, let's play with that. That had kind of a cool look for a minute. Just a little lighter. That was quite a bit lighter. The reason that there's so much room for lightness is because the picture itself is so dark. You know, it does need a little more. Let's try right in there. I think looks pretty good. So I wasn't going to use levels. I ended up using levels. You can also do that with the gray tones as well. You can click this middle piece, drag it left, drag it right, but I think I'm just going to mess with the white on this. Now, as far as everything else, let's look at those adjustment layers one more time, but I think, honestly, I'm pretty happy with this right now. Vibrance, hue and saturation, nah, I'm good. Color balance, I'm good. Black and white, nah, I'm happy with it as is. Photo filter could be interesting, but I really like what we've got going here, so I'm not going to mess with that. What a photo filter would do is, let's say, well, here, we'll just start with this warming filter that they have as an example. It's set to 25%. We could take it all the way down so it's not there at all, which just shows what we've already done. Or we could crank it up that high. There, it kind of looks like he's jumping into a fire. But obviously, I don't want any of those looks. I'm totally good without photo filter. So I'm going to pitch that. But I did want to show everybody the photo filter there. Channel mixer, color lookup, invert, posterize. Here we can make it look like a poster. With threshold, we could make it strict black and white. Just black and white pixels everywhere. And selective color is what I already used. So there it is, folks. I think, aside from just cropping it and putting on the Toypixx logo, I think we've got a pretty good shot. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I've got for this one. Say hello to the fuzzy mic. Anyway, do me a favor, comment below and let me know, do you want to see more Photoshop tutorials? Do you want more kind of behind the scenes stuff? What do you think of Wolverine? Because he's the old canucklehead. He's basically the man. Anyway, that's what I've got for this one. So as always, thanks a ton for checking out today's vid. And until next time, have fun and happy snapping. See ya. So my back room has a lot of stuff in it. It's where I film, set up the studio stuff, all that. It's got my weight bench and some weights. It's got my desk. It's got a whole lot of stuff that I just store back here as far as my figures and stuff I use for the figure photography. And so today, when I was getting ready for this, I actually cleaned some of it up, and now I want to clean the rest of it up. But there's other stuff to do. Priorities, man. I also need to eat. Oh, life is hard.